Good day, my name is Boluwatife. Welcome to another session of the TICU tutorial. Today, we'll be treating the ISLM model. So here are the objectives. We're going to be learning about the brief history of the ISLM model. Then we're going to be moving on to the ISLM model itself. We're going to be explaining the goods market and the curve derivation. We're going to be treating some exercises on the IS model. Then we'll be looking at the LM model, which is the money market. And then we're going to be deriving the curve. Then we'll be treating exercises on the LM model as well. Then we're going to be bringing the ISLM model together and then looking for the equilibrium. Then we're going to be ending the class with some exercises on the equilibrium. A brief introduction of the ISLM model. In 1937, John Hicks summarized what he saw as one of the King's main contributions, which is the joint descriptions of goods and financial markets. So this introduction was basically saying the whole idea of how financial markets and goods markets interact was brought up by Keynes. But then this guy just like brought it up as an idea and nothing was done. Then John Hicks in 1937 brought it back and like formulated it and like make it known to people. Then this was like the major role John Hicks played. Then this analysis was later extended by Alvin Ansen, who built upon this work, then further developing it into a framework. Then these people, Hicks and Ansen, called their formalization the ISLM model. Then this formalization was brought up due to the inadequacy of the classical theory. The classical economists believed that interest rates was like just affected by the goods market. Here, they assume that interest rates are determined solely by the goods market alone, without considering the financial market. But Hicks and Ansen, okay, said no, that interest rates cannot just be determined by the goods market. Then they brought up the ISLM model, which says that okay, interest rates can like also be determined by the interaction between the goods market and the financial market. So I've explained this. Then we're going to be moving on to the ISLM model itself. It is a macroeconomic framework that focuses on the interaction between the goods market, which is the IS, and the money market, which is the LM, to determine the equilibrium levels of interest rates and output. So why do we need to determine these equilibrium levels of interest rates and output? So we do this in order to understand, to help policymakers achieve macroeconomic stability, and this macroeconomic stability is characterized by low inflation, full employment, and stable economic growth. So if there is a low inflation, there's full employment, and there's a stable economic growth, then the policymakers have been able to achieve the macroeconomic stability. Also, by determining the equilibrium levels, policymakers can analyze the effects of monetary and fiscal policies. Monetary policies are policies laid down by the central bank to control the the supply and demand of money in the economy. Then fiscal policies. Fiscal policies is like a policy the government use to control the level of inflation in the economy. Then we also determine the equilibrium levels of interest and outputs to enable economies to forecast future trends, including potential recessions or expansions. So we're going to be moving on to the goods market. So I'm going to explain what the IS goods market is. The goods market, which is the market for goods and services, it is the market where households, businesses, and governments buy and sell goods and services. The I in the IS stands for investments. I believe you should know what investment is, but still let me explain it. It is the amount of money businesses spend on capital goods, such as buildings and equipment. So the particular amount of money that businesses use in buying equipment for their businesses is called investment. Why is it called investment? It's because these instruments will be used in the day-to-day operations of the business, which will in turn bring in money for the businesses. So this is why it is called investment. But investment from the individual perspective, it refers to the act of allocating money or resources to assets that have the potential for growth and yield. Then S stands for savings, the amount of money set aside by households and businesses for future use. So we're going to be talking about the IS curve. The IS curve shows how interest rates affect the economic income level, which in turn affects the goods market. So if interest rates are high, people will borrow less, which will in turn reduce income and then lower the demand for goods in the goods market. So if interest rates are low, people will borrow more, which will in turn increase income and then demand for goods. The IS curve is derived from the Keynesian curve. The Keynesian curve is a simple interpretation of the Keynes theory of how national income is determined. So this is a model of the national income. The Y stands for national income, which can also be called GDP. And what does GDP mean? It means the monetary value of goods and services produced within a country in a given period. So then the C stands for consumption, the I stands for investment, G stands for government expenditure, and NX stands for import minus export. This is like a model of the national income in an open economy. What I mean by an open economy is an economy where trade is allowed, where we can trade with other countries. So yeah, that's why we have import and export. But in this context, we'll be looking at a closed economy instead, where there are no imports and exports. So a Keynesian cross is a simple graph that shows how economy's income is determined. It is called a cross because it is formed by two lines that intersect. The two lines are aggregate demand, which shows how much people want to spend on goods and services, and aggregate supply, which shows how much is being produced by the business. The point where aggregate demand meets the aggregate supply line is called the equilibrium point, which is where the economy is balanced. Okay. How does the IS curve and the Keynesian curve relate? The Keynesian curve is the building block of the IS model. It's a building block in the sense that we have investment as a component in the Keynesian curve. This other model, we have investment as a component. So where the where the IS curve comes in is that interest rates affects investment, which in turn affects the income. So so this is why the Keynesian curve is a building block of the IS model. So for example, this is a model of the national income in a closed economy where there are no imports or exports. Y represents income, which is GDP, C represents consumption, I represents investment, G government expenditure. And these variables we are seeing affect the GDP of an economy. The IS comes in the form of interest rates. Interest rates affect investment, which in turn affects the aggregate income. For example, a high interest rate will lead to a higher borrowing cost, which will reduce the amount of borrowing. Then, and since businesses and individuals can't borrow, there will be funds for businesses to invest. Okay, so the IS curve comes in form of interest rates. Interest rates affect investment, which in turn affects the aggregate income. For example, if there is a high interest rate in the economy, it will lead to a higher borrowing cost. Meaning, if I want to borrow from a bank, meanwhile there's a high interest rate, the money I'll be paying back will be very high. So this will discourage me from borrowing. Then when I don't have enough money with me, okay, let's say I have a business and I can't borrow. So I won't have money to invest in capital goods, in buying equipment for my business. So a higher interest rate will lead to a reduction in borrowing and a reduction in investment. Yes. Then people will also be discouraged from investing because since the cost of borrowing is high, no one will want to like borrow the money you have invested. So then, meaning your investment won't yield a higher return. In a case where the interest rate is low, we get the opposite. So we'll have a high rate of borrowing and then the investment will increase. So that's how the IS curve relates to the Keynesian curve. This is the equation of the IS curve. The Y represents income, C represents consumption. So here we can see Y minus C. C is a function of disposable income. What do you mean by disposable income? Disposable income is the income an individual has after paying tax. So this can be represented as Y minus C, which is income minus tax. So your consumption is a function of your disposable income because you can't say your consumption is a function of your income because you don't have all of the income to yourself. You have to pay tax. So after paying tax, the money left is called the disposable income. Then your I is a function of interest rates. So this is not like specifically the equation for the IS curve because we can see consumption and government expenditure, and this variable does not concern the IS curve. So the IS curve is just showing how interest rates affect investment, which in turn affects income. So we therefore treat consumption and government expenditure as exogenous, since they are not dependent on the interest rate. The only variable that we are looking at here is just the investment and how the investment affects the income. So we're going to be treating some examples.